My name is Gail Curran. I'm the Higher Education Manager at University College Isle of Man. And our UCM Talk series, I think, is one of our a real achievement for UCM as we grow and grow in importance here on the island in terms of providing education at all levels to a very wide range of people. So this evening's talk is given by Dr. Florida Clements. And I'm smiling and saying that with a somewhat of a heraldic flurry at the end there, because Florida actually is one of our own. Florida is a senior lecturer and program leader here at UCM, and we're very grateful for that. Now, after almost 20 years working as a senior manager, particularly in the air industry, Florida developed particular expertise and success in digital marketing and information management, and importantly, I'm sure for the organization she worked for, revenue generation. Florida's desire to share her experience and knowledge with young people is what brought her to education and brought her to UCM, where, as I say, she is a senior lecturer and program leader across a range of business and finance subjects. But Florida is not one to stand still, and in 2021, she completed her PhD. And it is the research topic of that PhD that she is going to discuss and share with us tonight. So tonight's talk is, fabulous title, The Isle of Man, all dressed up, but nowhere to go, ? So Florida's research asked, can place branding and associated marketing strategies help turn around the fortunes of the Isle of Man? I guess in simple terms, do they work? And I think you're going to find out some really interesting insights from Florida's talk tonight. And if I just put a word in, a PhD research project is a massive undertaking, and for Florida to be able to condense her findings into what is a relatively short talk is quite an achievement. So thank you for that, and I know that you're giving us a sample of that extensive research that you've done, and we very, very much look forward to it. And thank you for taking the time to share it with us tonight. I give you Dr. Florida Clements.
Thank you, Gail, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. As Gail mentioned, I will share my screen now, and I will start showing some slides. So hopefully everyone can see a full slide.
Yes.
In the screen. So, okay. Well, when I started this research, it all started about 4 or 5 years ago now, in 2017. So I started the research then and completed last year, and try to condense all this research in this presentation. So how will I proceed tonight? Initially, I'll give you a bit of context, what made me go in this direction and do this research, what aim I set myself research, a bit of context of what academia has already explored and discussed in terms of this topic. How did I go about doing this research, what I found throughout it, and then what conclusions and recommendations I came to achieve. So where did it all start? As I said, in 2017, I was looking in the newspapers, and I saw it was a 2 pages advert from the Isle of Man government in the Courier asking Isle of Man residents to promote the island to their family and friends across in the UK or wherever they were from. And I thought, yeah, that's a good initiative, trying to attract talented people and entrepreneurs and businesses to come to the island. However, what attracted me, it was a strapline in that newspaper, which made me look a bit further. It was the new strapline or the new brand of the Isle of Man. And I thought, well, I think I've heard quite a few others in the few years that I've been in the Isle of Man for about 18 years now, but during these years, not been very attentive, but still, there were things that came to my attention and were the new branding initiatives that Isle of Man government did time to time. So I started doing a bit of digging, trying to find out, well, when it was the last one that changed, when it was the first one. And what I found out was that I'm sure most of you that have been living in the Isle of Man, you've heard the Isle of Man giving you freedom to flourish. And this was a branding initiative that started in 2003. After that was another one, the Isle of Man Where You Can, which started in 2012. And after that, the one that really sort of was the initiation for my research, it was the very latest one, the Isle of Man, a special place to live, work, and visit, which came in 2017. And this sort of advertising, this strapline describing the Isle of Man and all the others, made me think, well, ways you can present a place. Is this the same place we're talking about? And how different can a place be after 5, 6, 7 years to be presented in a different way? And as Gail mentioned, amongst other subjects that I teach in the business and marketing degrees, one of them is branding. So this intrigued me, and I thought, well, the government is trying to present the Isle of Man in this way. They have tried for years in these other different ways. But what do people really think about the Isle of Man? And first point of call, looking online, different newspapers, articles, and what I found were these kind of things. You can see these were the headlines in some of the newspapers that came up through a very basic search in Google, the Isle of Man, and one after the other, what I could see was how the press has portrayed the Isle of Man and how the press portrays a place is a very important factor for the reputation of this place. If people do not visit, do not come to see the Isle of Man, how will they form their ideas, their perceptions of the Isle of Man? On one side, the government is saying that it's a fantastic place to live, work, and visit, while on the other side, this is what the press was showing about the Isle of Man. And I thought, well, but maybe press exaggerates a bit, because at that time, it was the time when the ICIJ, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, published the Panama Papers. And for sure, whoever was in the Isle of Man can very well remember that these articles linked the Isle of Man with so many wrongdoings from some companies who were trying to hide the assets or manage the money of the super rich. And as you can see, this is how the press described the Isle of Man. And I thought, maybe if I go to social media, it might be a different picture. So simple search at the time, and this was only my initial search, in social media. Now, in social media, you'll find the social media pages of the Isle of Man government, which for sure, they are supposed to show the Isle of Man in a very good light. But what do people think? And this is what I found in Reddit. And I took screenshots because, well, apart from language, which is a bit shocking, somehow it's a way that certain people were expressing what they thought about what was happening. So basically, was everybody in the Isle of Man in favor of the initiative of the government to try and attract talented workforce and different businesses? Well, it didn't look as much. So looking at the fact that the press was presenting the Isle of Man in one way, in certain forums, the discussions were going in a completely different way, that this was the point when I thought, well, I'd like to dig a bit deeper, and I want to find out what's going on, why the government is changing the strapline every 5 years or 6 years, what happens, what changed in the Isle of Man to change the branding again, and whether the way that the government was presenting the Isle of Man, was that the way that people perceived the Isle of Man? So for this reason, the aim that I decided to follow and try and achieve through this research was identifying how an understanding of the relationship between place identity, place image, place branding might better inform the strategies to enhance that image and the reputation of this island where we live, and thereby help in attracting new talented workforce and businesses in the Isle of Man. And as normal, when you do research, the first point of call is, what does the literature, what does the academia say about this area? So I started researching and reading around and conducting a literature review in order to see how do people define, or how does academia defines place identity, place image, reputation, place branding, and is there a work around this? And this was in order for the government to achieve a legitimate aim, not only just to bring these people, but the overall aim to keep the economy of the Isle of Man growing, as it has been doing in the past. And to my surprise, while reading widely, what I came to conclusion was the fact that despite many years of research, especially in the field of place branding and place marketing, the academia has not reached an agreement even in the basic definitions. What is place identity? How can we delimit the place image? What is place branding as a procedure? And the worst, when it came to finding how to measure, then there weren't any frameworks or models that could help the practitioners to do their job, to conduct a place branding campaign and see the benefits that this campaign would bring. Going a step back, when I did my initial research, looking at these 3 branding campaigns, I inquired to the Isle of Man government and I asked, is any information or any reports that could tell the public what were the conclusions of these branding campaigns that were undertaken? So what did the government achieve when they conducted Freedom to Flourish? What did the government achieve when they conducted the Isle of Man Where You Can? And the answer that I got back from the government was, there's nothing. There's no record or there's no measurement to tell whether these campaigns were successful, whether they achieved the objectives of the Isle of Man government for these particular campaigns. And I was surprised at the time. However, after these literature analysis, it became even clearer that the field of place branding is fairly new. So if the academia has not reached an agreement on defining certain phenomenon, and they have not yet reached agreements about frameworks, how to follow certain processes, how to measure certain events, then how can practitioners do that? Where can they go and look for tools that can help them do their job? Well, if you're looking around, all countries do branding campaigns. And in all these cases, the practitioners try to do the best they can. There are a lot of branding campaigns that are successful, and there are others which are not. And some of them, they also cause the opposite effect, one of which was Rule Britannia, was a campaign that they undertook before the Olympic Games, and this came to backfire. So even a branding campaign of a big country like UK, it turned out to backfire. So looking at the Isle of Man, what were the chances, or how could the government proceed, or whoever were the practitioners working in this field? And in that respect, that's why I decided to follow further in this research to try and see what more could be done, what else could I find out, was anything I could find that perhaps could help the practitioners. One thing that I found was that throughout the literature, the academia fully agree in the impact of place branding as a process, as a strategy, or as part of the government strategy. They all have seen and they have measured that the impacts are really wide and they can have a long-lasting effect. And examples are out there for different countries. Let's say branding Dubai. What has happened? What is Dubai now? What did it used to be? A small city in the middle of the desert, and suddenly is the center of the world. Similarly, there are other branding campaigns that have lifted up the reputation of different countries. So they do have an impact. However, how do people go about it? There's not a full agreement. So in that respect, the core of a branding campaign, what they all agree, is what consists of place image and what is the place identity, and how closely they are linked. Well, in that respect, this goes back to the psychology. Places have identities. Well, yes, we cannot agree in a definition what exactly is a place identity. Is it the identity of the people? Is it the identity of a group of people, or which group is more representative of a place? And especially if we're looking at a place like the Isle of Man, a very small place, the first impression is that it should have a solid identity because it's an island, it's a small place. Well, maybe in that respect, I would say it is a very small place, but can you find two people that are very similar to each other? Everybody has their own identity. They have the group of people that they associate themselves with, and expanding that concept to an entire country is not as easy because there are so many factors. And besides this, as the psychology says, our identities are not formed only by us, are always formed in constant exchange with others, the same as personal identity. Our personal identity, I am who I am, not because I think this way, but because of the exchange that I have with everyone else. So my identity is formed through this exchange. And when it comes to deciding exactly what is included in that, there's a boundary that shifts all the time, depending wherever you put the boundary that you want to identify the identity for. There is an identity of Port St. Mary. There's an identity of the street where I live, and this is us. However, what about people in Ramsey? Are they us or are they not? Are people in the Isle of Man British or are they monks? The same questions come over and over, and therefore it's very hard to pin down an identity that, a definition of identity that can help to really put it as a basis to start the work. However, whichever way the branding or marketing will go, they will need a point where to start building everything else that they need further on to achieve different aims, like the government case, to achieve attraction of talented people and workforce. And at the same time, when it comes to branding, what I came to conclude was the fact that branding as a process is very much misunderstood. And that's what academia is trying to stress over and over again. For many people, branding plays is all about sticking a logo, writing a strapline, put it in the adverts, and there you are. Well, actually, it's not as simple as this. And that's why I sort of, after conducting all this literature review, what I came to conclude was that place branding is not simply this process of, oh, let's start a campaign now and put a strapline. Rather, is the kind of process that needs the right priority in all government policies. And most of all, need to take into consideration the interests of all stakeholders. And therefore, it's important to measure the benefits. And who could be the stakeholders? Everyone living on the island, every groups that are on the island that are part of this community, every group that will be impacted from whatever initiative the government is going to take. Now, as the area of place branding and marketing is very wide, this research that I conducted had to be focused in certain elements. Otherwise, it would be quite a wide research, and the program that I was following, this would go far beyond the level of a doctorate. Perhaps it's going to be part of my future research. However, when trying to delineate the relationship between place identity, place image and reputation, and where does the place branding and marketing stand, I concluded in this simple delineation that shows the link between every single element in the process of place branding. So basically, place has its own identity, and whoever is responsible for place branding need to base their branding initiative on the identity of the place. You cannot start doing a place, creating a brand for a place that has nothing to do with the place. The Isle of Man is the place that it is and cannot be shown like some other place. Let's say Germany is well known. Brand Germany reflects what? High technology, it reflects car manufacturing. Well, this brand cannot be adopted to the Isle of Man because there's nothing in the Isle of Man that could justify this kind of brand. So very important element, the place brand identity has to be based on the place identity. And once this is decided, which part of identity will be used for the branding, then a place marketing and promotion should be put underway in order to create a place brand image. Now, as you see in this schematic way, you see a straight line here, which is the division between us and them. This is us, the people in the Isle of Man. We have our own identity. This is what our government is doing, creating the place brand identity and promoting through marketing and various ways of promotion in order to create a brand image for the Isle of Man. But this brand image is what the others hold for the Isle of Man based on the campaign of the government. And this brand image is very temporary, short-lived. For that reason, work should carry on in order to create a place brand equity, which is a bit of a longer image of the Isle of Man in the minds of people who would like to come. And this place brand equity, which is based only on part of our identity, should be the main influence in the image and the reputation of the Isle of Man. As much as all governments would like to control the image and the reputation of a place, this is impossible. And it's not this simplistic straight line that I've created here that creates a place image. As you can see, these two other arrows, there are so many other factors that influence a place image and place reputation. However, a good branding and marketing campaign should be the one that should dominate the image of the place that is being created. And this needs to be sustained long term. Now, as this process, as explained before, is quite a big process, and the research would not allow to complete the entire process, the focus of my research was looking simply at place identity and place brand identity of the Isle of Man, and trying to compare what is happening in this small link between these two. How much the place brand identity of the Isle of Man matches the place identity. Is there any differences? Are they the same? So for this brings to the second part of the research. I followed a simple method to look and explore the Isle of Man identity. I interviewed 15 different people who live in the Isle of Man at different ages. As you can see, some of them in the Isle of Man, some relocated from the UK, and others that have come from far and wide. I also, while I chose the participants in the research, I tried to make sure that the relocated people, some of them have been here more than 10 years, some less than 10 years, some relocated for work, some relocated for businesses. And at the same time, some of them were working for the government or in conjunction with government, and others were working in businesses. So I tried to get a spread and also the age brackets and a mixture of male and female participants. And as part of the process of the research, I tried to contrast what people think, these 15 participants that I selected for the research, compared to how the Isle of Man is presented in one of the government websites. And as you can see, I chose to analyze the website of the Department for Enterprise. Why did I choose the Department for Enterprise? Well, simple reason, this is the department that was tasked with promoting the Isle of Man and trying to attract these talented people and businesses to relocate to the Isle of Man. So the interviews that I undertook were between 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. And everything was anonymous, and so I cannot disclose much in that respect. However, the interviews were analyzed using strict rigor methodological approaches, as already accepted by the academia. And what I came to conclude when it came to writing the findings from the interviews was that the people that I interviewed, the only thing they had in common, they were people working in businesses and people who had relocated for work or for businesses. So they were business people. And while interviewing them about the Isle of Man, what came out was that talking about the Isle of Man for them could not be detached, whether they were talking about their life in the Isle of Man, about the lifestyle, or the business. Both these sides were closely linked. And the themes that I found in these interviews, when it came to the Isle of Man as a place for business, for these people, an attractive business environment was paramount for them to relocate their businesses. However, at the same time, when looking at the business environment in the Isle of Man, almost most of them perceived the Isle of Man as a remote location. They all stressed that the public business support services were very, very important to them. The talented workforce was in short supply and their businesses were struggling. At the same time, for quite a few of them, they were attracted from funding and financial support, but that wasn't the same. And I'll go in details about every single one of these themes. However, when it comes to taxation regime in the Isle of Man, well, as you can see the title, for them taxation benefits were the rose-tinted glasses that made everything in the Isle of Man good. When it came to the lifestyle, for quite a few of them, the image of the Isle of Man was almost non-existent. They discussed how life is in the Isle of Man, and for some of the relocated people, it was a balancing act, but a balancing act between safety and boredom. For the relocated one, the welcome promise on this advertising was unfulfilled, and some others discussed issues like the importance of attracting certain types of businesses. How did we see the life overall in the Isle of Man? Similarly, the website of the government, the website of the Department for Enterprise followed similar themes. So they stressed the importance of an attractive location for businesses. The Isle of Man is an attractive location for businesses. In the website came out that Isle of Man is well positioned internationally, well recognized. The government values the talented workforce. The Isle of Man is hiving with business activity, and the government is very supportive to all businesses. And at the same time, they stressed the great quality of life in the Isle of Man. On one hand, trying to ensure and show that the life is not boring in the Isle of Man. There are so many things to do. And Isle of Man is one of the safest places with great education, good healthcare, and good living standards. These were high-level themes. So overall, the topic, what these people spoke about. However, when it came to comparing every single element of that composed those themes, and sorry, not sure if you can see this screen. Okay. I looked at every single element and compared how much these elements align with each other. And in a comparison of the residential environment, it turns out that the way the government has presented the Isle of Man is very much aligned with how these people see the Isle of Man. Is great natural environments, safe place, stable economy, good health and education, a lot of outdoor sports and great community. The only part where there was slight misalignment in terms of the Isle of Man as a place to live, it was the welcome part. While government is saying all these people are so welcome, some of these people who have relocated found the Isle of Man being unwelcome, not because of the community, rather what they had to face once they were in the Isle of Man. And especially here, what caused the irritation for some of these people was the work permit system. So relocating to the Isle of Man, they needed to apply for work permits. And the idea was, why are we enticed to come in a place for which we need to apply for permits, and some would get permits, some would not get? In that respect, may I say that all the data and all the interviews were conducted before the lockdown. Maybe some of the things have changed in legislation since then. So before the lockdown, this means in 2019. Anything that has changed from 2019 and now might be sort of different from what is here. And I know that have been some changes when it came to work permit rules. Other things, there were things that related to residential environment, and they were very much dependent on the age of the people that, of the participants. For the young participants, the Isle of Man was a boring place, and some of them were looking for the first opportunity to leave the island. While the website was showing that there's a variety of entertainment in the Isle of Man. The image of the Isle of Man, while the government is trying to build the image of the Isle of Man, good or amazing, for some of the people who have relocated, especially the international people coming from other countries, not just the UK, they did not even know a place like the Isle of Man existing. And as far as the topic of money, morals, moaning, this related mostly in how these people viewed the different initiatives of the government. So for some of them, attracting e-gaming industry, gambling companies, they question whether making these businesses called the Isle of Man a home, does this match the moral values that these people are trying to bring up their children? And as far as this topic, this was raised only from a few people from the participants, from the panel, and they were the highest educated people that were interviewed. While for other participants, giving a place to the gambling organizations and making sure that the government creates the frameworks and all the legislation and the rules that they need, it was the best thing, because these companies were paying good wages, and this was improving the overall the economy of the Isle of Man. So this was a good thing.
5 minutes, Florida.
Sorry, when it came to business environment, then here the misalignment was almost throughout. The only part when what government is saying and what people agreed that was a benefit was taxation regime. For everything else, there was a misalignment between what these business people see and what government says that is happening. And all this misalignment was accompanied every time they talk about these issues. This was causing so much frustration. So in that respect, looking at how the Isle of Man has been branded and how the government is trying to present the Isle of Man, not being aligned with what exactly is happening in the Isle of Man, creates a dissonance. Is not the fact that these participants were frustrated because what was written in the website. They were frustrated because of the problems they had to face every single day running their businesses in the Isle of Man. Expensive access to the Isle of Man, the airlines, the ferry, everything, they found it very expensive and not easy to hop on the plane and go and watch a show somewhere in the UK. Banking, postal services, telecommunications, all of them thought that all these services and this infrastructure wasn't helping these businesses. So looking at this frustration, it wasn't simply the moaning part. This frustration was such that from the 15 people that I interviewed, one of them relocated their business in the UK. Another one had a branch in the Isle of Man and a branch across. They closed the Isle of Man branch. A third participant started a new business, but did not register it in the Isle of Man. They registered it in another jurisdiction. So these frustrations were not simple moanings, were frustrations that were guiding their decisions. So in that respect, whilst looking at all these frustrations that people have, these business people, I took some time to think and to analyze all of this. And what came to me as part of the sense making while you do go through the process of research, what I noticed was that the things that were making these people frustrated were what Herzberg in his two-factor theories calls the hygiene factors, which are factors that help a business or an individual at work be comfortable to be there. For example, if I would go back in the previous slide, things like banking infrastructure, postal infrastructure, if they are amazing, they are not going to give these businesses or access to the Isle of Man is not going to give them a competitive edge. But if support from the government or these things are not working properly, they won't allow these businesses to run. If it is difficult to fill in the company registration, well, that business is not going to take off the ground. Therefore, looking at people's frustration, this is what occurred to me, that basically what we are struggling here is not factors that motivate people and give them great satisfaction. Something like this is the taxation. However, is these hygiene factors that are making these people frustrated and getting them, some of them, to take the decision to leave the Isle of Man. So when it comes to try and see what can we do to get this branding of the Isle of Man to represent what we are, well, maybe if we become that brand, if we become this place that is offering these facilities, would be the simplest way. So we want to be a place that supports businesses, then what is in there to support these businesses? Is it easy to register a company? Is it easy for the companies to open a bank account? Is it easy for them to find staff, personnel to work for them? Then these are the areas that the government should focus first. And then that legislation about the taxation, it is a motivator, but unless they have fulfilled these hygiene factors, if people can't run their businesses, they will never be in the position to benefit from taxation regime. So this was the tool, a potential tool that I would recommend to the people who are looking after branding the Isle of Man to analyze the situation and see where are we now? What are we trying to achieve? Let's try and position ourselves in the place that we can deliver what we are saying. And as far as branding the place, as I said at the beginning, branding a place should not be treated as a campaign, is a strategy to enhance place reputation. Because reputation is enduring. If somebody would go outside the Isle of Man and inquire about the Isle of Man, it's not about what the government has written in their website, is all the perceptions of these people who are leaving the Isle of Man that will make that reputation. And it's the responsibility of the government to develop strategies that earn a reputation that is fair, true, and powerful, and honestly reflective of the spirit of the Isle of Man. So,
thank you. Florida, thank you. And I'm just conscious that there'll be generating some comments and questions, and so thank you very much for that. We'll do a proper vote of thanks shortly, but I think a comment that Simon Costain made early on in the talk, well, one that might be of interest to you, Florida, was that back in 2000, Carol Glover became head of Isle of Man Tourism and Leisure and did quite an extensive exercise around branding and identity at that time, but that's kind of pre the era that you were looking at. But I think a comment is this possible dilemma where the government tends to want to put forward an identity they wish the world to see. So Simon reminds us that the current buzzwords are vibrant, secure, and sustainable, which have come out of the new administration. Now, whether that comes into a marketing place brand or not, or whether that's more of a government a wish, I think what it raised from me as a question was that vibrant, sustainable, and secure future is actually some of the things you're talking about aren't happening because we're not actually delivering what we're saying on the can, which is a great place to work, freedom to flourish, whatever, because we haven't provided sustainable and secure systems and processes for people and businesses to participate in.
Well, yeah, that's what has been a wide agreement, I would say, in academia, but the same thing looking at examples of other countries when they have run their branding campaigns. The idea is before they set up that strap line, they have to ask themselves, how much of it are we delivering now? How much of it can we deliver in the short term? So by the time that the people who are looking at this strap line, they try and test the waters, we are giving them exactly this, because at the very core, the brand as such in marketing or in place branding and in everything is a promise. If it's not delivered, it backfires. And when it comes to branding, I would say Anholt, who's one of the most prominent researchers and practitioners in place branding, says place branding is free. Marketing is the part that costs, but branding is free, because what is branding is not one campaign, is the government strategy, what they want a place to be and how they are delivering in every aspect of that strategy. So if they want the Isle of Man to be a vibrant place, maybe a quick check. What does the word vibrant mean? What is a vibrant place? What does it have? And then, do we have that? Perhaps we do, perhaps we don't. If we don't, have we started doing something to achieve that? So whoever takes that flight to come to the Isle of Man, they will find that vibrant place. Otherwise, if they don't find, what is it these people are going to say when they leave the Isle of Man?
Yeah, there was a phrase you used that it occurs in exchange. The identities is exactly. Formed in exchange, which is sort of that sharing and that experiential stuff, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say a small anecdote. went to buy some material from a shop recently in Ramsey and bought some cotton at the same time, and for some reason was drawn to the fact that the cotton was made in Munich in Germany, and just passed the comment, I didn't know cotton, Munich was a great place for cotton. And the respondent of the person who owns the shop was that, well, everything that Germany makes is good. And I think, it's that, but that we're talking decades and decades of reputation building for high quality productivity.
Well, I'd say that Germany started building the reputation that they have now in the mid 1800s, when the government took the decision, what will Germany be known for? For being the excellence of craftsmanship, technology, whatever was then. And constantly since then, the German government has invested in getting their workforce skilled and imposing quality in everything that is produced in Germany. So the reputation Germany has was not built in the last 3 years, 5 years. It was built in the last 200 years.
And survived 2 world wars.
Well,
that might be superficial comment to make. Has anyone got any further questions? Because I think what Florida's really saying is that unless we're willing to commit to what's in the can, what we say is in the can is almost meaningless and arguably destructive or counterproductive, I should say, in terms of place branding. Has anyone else got any comments or questions? And yes, as Katrina says, the brand has to be based on trust, that you have to be able to back it up, as opposed to just, as you say, because I say so, so shall it be. Exactly. Yeah. So your challenge to the island, I guess, in summary, Florida, is that we either have to, with whatever branding we're saying, whatever place brand we say we have to do the work to back it up. Or if we're going to go into, because we're probably due a new one on the basis of 3 and 15 years, we're probably about to be to have another one launched. If we do that, we need to do it with some thought as to, can we back up what we're saying, and exactly. Then commit in the long term, commit in the very long term.
Even if we can't fulfill it right now, to be something in place that is showing that we are working toward that. We are becoming a vibrant place. We're not. Well, this is a question to the people here. Do they think Isle of Man is a vibrant place? And if we are, then yeah, the government is showing what we are. But if we're not, then probably the government strategy in every single department need to reflect that. Is vibrancy important for Department of Infrastructure? What can Department of Infrastructure do to show in their part that the Isle of Man is a vibrant place? What can Treasury do about it? What can Department of Health and Social Care do about it? So every single department should have in their strategy one objective that, or plans that would contribute toward this strapline. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
So what place is there for aspiration then? So arguably a government or an organisation may say, we want to be vibrant, we want to be stable, we want to be secure. Yeah. So is there a distinction between an aspirational vision for where we're heading versus a strapline that reflects where we are?
Well, this is quite a big debate, I would say, even in academia, because some people, some academics insist that the brand should reflect what it is, while others say that it should be aspirational. However, the brand should not be misleading. This is the most important. It can be aspirational, and these strap lines should show what the country is aiming for, but they should not be misleading. And this is the idea. If we're saying that the Isle of Man is a vibrant place, safe and secure, then for somebody coming here, they should see work being done toward achieving the vibrancy, but already is a safe and secure place. So,
okay. So place
we
brand.
are working. So it goes along this line, but should not be misleading.
So place, there's room in a place brand for what is and what is wanted.
What can become.
Both. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Got that. There's a comment here from Simon again. Interesting stuff. Florida suggests you forward your research paper to KPMGIM because they are the ones that are putting together a new economic strategy for the island as we speak, I believe.
All right. Thank you. I'll bear this in mind. I have forwarded my research to a couple of people in the government, but I guess reading a doctorate is quite a bit of a chore.
We might have to find a way to place brand your research.
Yeah. Anyway, whether they wish to take them into consideration or not, as I said, this research is based in the perception of 15 people that were selected specifically because they were business people and fulfilled these kind of criteria. They weren't selected for other reasons. I only was looking to get a perception overall of how some of these people see the Isle of Man. And I would say, but this is outside the research, that many other people who have come to contact with the conclusion of this research have said they saw this research reflecting exactly how other people saw the Isle of Man. Yeah. So perhaps some of the people that are here, I don't know what their perceptions are. Do they see the Isle of Man as per the participants on the research, or do they think that the view is a bit skewed? But
so what if I'd been smart enough, I could have set up some kind of poll on the Zoom platform, couldn't I? But listen, folks, we're going to wrap it up because it's just about to be 7 o'clock. This, as I said before, this talk has been recorded. It will be on the UCM website, and of course, comments can be added to at that point, perhaps. I'm sure Florida's days of researching are not over, and I suspect there'll be the story will continue going forward. It's an important story, but really a big thank you, because preparing to present research, particularly condensing research for an event like this, takes time and it takes energy, and it's deeply appreciated, Florida, for you to do that. And if people are going away with more questions in their head and want to go and will talk to someone about this, and whether it's prompted a thought in your own head, that is exactly what the intention of UCM Talks is. It's just to start, stimulating thoughts and hopefully conversations that you have with people in your life. That's it for tonight, folks. Once again, thank you for coming, and great thanks to Dr. Florida Clements for her presentation on the Isle of Man, all dressed up, but nowhere to go. We'll see. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.